Have you ever been lying in bed there thinking about your relationship? Or maybe you just got out of a big disagreement with your spouse, and the thought that keeps coming up inside of your head is, man, my relationship would be so much better if she would just change. If she would just change this one thing, we would be in such a better place. Well, we're here to talk about that sort of situation today. We are talking about what do you do when my spouse never seems to change?
hmm or if you're having the thought like, if he loved me, he would do this,
Mm,
right? That can be a very common thought, but it can be a really painful thought. And the reason why we want to talk about this is because we see a lot of couples struggling with this. They are just waiting for their spouse to do this thing. Um, and it can be so frustrating
and painful.
for both people,
Yeah.
right? The person who, like, it's obvious their spouse wants them to change, that's painful. And then for the person trying to change their spouse, that's really, really painful. And I've seen a lot of wives, especially, struggling with bitterness that comes from this thought in your head over and over and over again. And then they're so disappointed. That disappointment just, grows and grows, and it turns into this really, really painful bitterness. And I have experienced that myself, even, in our marriage.
Yeah, I think there can be resentment on both sides for something like that. Like even the one who is supposed to be changing or that is expected to change also can be very resentful. Like why do I need to change all these things?
Hmm
Why am I not good enough? The way I am,
hmm
and that can cause resentment on that side too.
And I think the first big question, we're gonna give you some questions today to
Mm.
ask, because I think there's a need for so much humility and reflection when we're talking about this conversation, because this can bring up a lot of emotions. And I totally get it. If you, as you're listening, if a lot of things are coming up for you, maybe emotions you don't like, maybe some thoughts you don't like. And so I just encourage you to really take some time, as you listen and afterward, to go through some of these questions and just reflect. So the first one is, does your spouse even need to change?
Mm.
I know the thought in your head is they do need to change.
They better change right now.
Right? And I think if you're like, "Oh no, I don't ever think that way." One way to check if you're thinking this way is that, are you like using that phrase of like, he should be doing this, he should be doing that. You
She
know,
should be doing that.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. Because that is one kind of sneaky way, that it comes out in our words that we want our spouse to change. So the first question, do they need to change? I mean, let's look at, there are legitimate reasons why your spouse should change in
Yeah,
marriage.
absolutely. I mean, especially if you're in some kind of really unhealthy pattern, like let's say you have an addiction of some kind, that is a change that needs to be made. Maybe there's abuse in the relationship. If somebody's hurting you, absolutely, they need to. There's some change absolutely needed in that situation. Um, Rebuilding trust. That's a big one, and that's been a big one for us is rebuilding trust and like showing up consistently and doing what he or she says they're going to do. Um, there needs to be change there.
Or
Absolutely.
lies and affairs,
Yeah.
or different,
Mm,
if there's been pornography and different things like that, there is going to be a need, for change.
absolutely.
Because saying sorry over and over and over again and then not actually making the change, that is just really, really unhelpful for
Yeah, it
marriage.
causes a ton of damage and it just destroys that trust over and over again.
hmm but a lot of times, those things aren't necessarily the things that we are, trying to change, or we're, upset that our spouse isn't
Yes.
changing. And those are totally legitimate. And we would be happy to work with you if you are going through some of those things, because all those can be hard to navigate, and or we could point you in some good
Yeah.
directions for more help. But um some of the things that we are mostly trying to change in our partner are things that like we're just trying to control. It's like a form of, I feel safer or I feel better when they do things the way I want, or
It's a preference thing. It's
yeah,
like I like things this way. This makes me feel more comfortable in the relationship. And if I
yeah.
feel more comfortable in the relationship, then they should change to meet that desire of mine.
Hmm. And it's not usually a conscious thought, I don't think.
No.
It's usually under, it's like you subconscious. You're not, going through this whole thought process every time that you
No.
start to say something to your spouse about, wanting them to change. It's just, there's a wound there where you're feeling like you need to control to stay safe. And so we're going to talk more about some of that deeper stuff, but unmet expectations when you come into marriage, or throughout the marriage, then you start to have these expectations of your spouse, maybe that they're going to be like your dad, or maybe that they're going to be like all the amazing men in the love stories that I read all the time, right? And you're like, why isn't he chasing after me on a white horse?
Yeah, he's not. He's just not this romantic, robust, amazing man that I am expecting. Yeah.
But actually, the number one reason for unhappiness in marriage is having these unmet expectations.
Mm.
And we've heard, other people talk about, marriage counselors and things like that. They talk about this subject, especially in the Christian world, how, well, just don't do that. Don't have these expectations, or just change it. Look for the positive in your spouse. But and that's fine, but there's so much more underneath the surface that we need to address. Like, we don't want to just tell you, just stop having these unrealistic
Yeah, that's such a
expectations.
surface level change when
Mhm.
there's a deeper root behind why you're having these expectations, and how to um, how to understand those expectations that are coming up, and heal something deeper that is behind those expectations.
Hmm. So even if you are like, okay, yes, I have a legitimate reason that my spouse needs to change, right? Abuse, addiction,
Yeah.
whatever. Even if you have that legitimate reason, it's really still not a great idea or a great thought to continue, is that, they need to change, and you kind of take on that burden of, I'm going to help them change.
Yeah, because absolutely you cannot change somebody else.
Hmm.
And that's hard for us to like think about, because we often have this belief that we can. And we have this belief that we can do X, Y, and Z, and that will make a difference. Or if I complain enough, or work hard enough at this, I will get them to change for me. And
Hmm.
that all that is just that's just going to create a lot of frustration and anxiety in the relationship, and it's just not healthy.
Well, and what it does is it leaves you feeling so frustrated and so exhausted, because you feel like, I mean, especially for women, now we feel like they're mothers, which we don't want to feel like, and they actually don't want us to be their mothers.
Absolutely not.
But we feel like they're mothers. How many times have you said, he's just acting like another one of my kids, right? I know I've said that to Adam before. I feel like I have a sixth child, which I don't recommend saying that. Okay, that was not a bright shining moment, but um, you know that is how we end up feeling when we're trying to take on that role of like, I know that you need to do this, I'm going to help you do this. And sometimes I really truly believe that it comes from, you genuinely, you love them, you're trying to help them, you want to, but that is not, it's not going to work. Like, that's what we're trying to say, is like,
Yeah.
your brain might be thinking, yes, this is the way, like, I can do this, I can help them. But the thing is, and you can help, you can inspire, but you can't change them. And it's just going to leave you burned out, and that's just not where we want you to be in your marriage,
Absolutely not.
not where God wants you to be. And we know that only God can transform our hearts, right? Only God can make these big, amazing changes. And, it's through him where we see the change. And you can see that in the Bible. I love the example of Saul, and who was later known as Paul. I mean, here we have this guy
Yeah.
who is killing Christians. He has such hatred for them, such judgment over them. Cannot stand
He's
them.
going out of his way to go and persecute them and to bring an end to this movement, and he thinks he's serving God in that.
Mhm.
That is his service to God.
Mhm.
And then to all of a sudden, who changes him? I mean, God. God comes in and
Like, can you imagine
knocks
such?
him off his horse.
I mean, such a heart change.
Yeah.
And so, if you're starting to think like, no, I'm giving up hope. I don't think my husband is going to change. I don't think my wife ever will change. Even though you might be, praying for them and doing all this encouragement. Um, we want to encourage you. God can do it. It's still possible, okay? God can do anything. And I think he loves to, blow our minds in that way. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
And you have to leave it in his hands. You have to leave it in God's hands, because when we try to take over and try to be God in that situation and try to change your spouse, it's really not even a role that God has for you in the marriage.
Mm-hmm. So I love this passage from Jeremiah 18:6, where God is talking about how we are like the clay in his hands. And he says, "O Israel, can I not do to you as this potter has done to this clay? As the clay is in the potter's hands, so are you in my hand."
Mm.
And so it's such a beautiful thing to know that God cares about every single thing for you. And he does actually, he wants you to enjoy freedom here. He wants you to enjoy peace, and he wants you to enjoy growth and transformation. And so he cares so much that he is working on, doing all this beautiful shaping. Not that you're not already perfectly loved by him. This has nothing to do with your
Right.
worth or your value. You are so perfectly loved, but God knows what is even better for you than the current situation that you're in right now. And he wants that for you. And so he's on your side. He's in there doing the hard work that we just can't do.
Yeah. And when we are trying to take on that work, it just causes so much pain. So when we let God just do it, that releases us. That's one of the gifts he has for us in that, is he gives us then a sense of peace, that it's not all up to us to try to like fix this. It's not all up to us to try to like make this situation what we want it to be. He can give us this peace and this joy and this like confidence when we surrender our spouse and the things that need to change to him, and just pray about them. I mean, really, just to like release those to him in prayer and be expectant for him to do the work.
Mm-hmm. And I know it sounds like so much easier. It is so much easier when you just say it. You'll just surrender. Oh my goodness, I am practicing surrender this year. Like, this is my number one goal for the whole year. It's just to practice surrender daily, and it is so hard.
Yeah,
It's so good, but it is so hard, and it's just so easy to say, "Well, just surrender," but
yeah,
so much harder to do, and we
yeah.
we know that, and so we're just like cheering you on, and cheering ourselves on as we practice this too. So this is reminding me, and it's something that I still struggle with to a degree, but man, earlier in our marriage, I was so stuck on like wanting Adam to change into more of like a leader for our family. I knew from the beginning. I remember, I don't know if it was like in our first year of marriage, and we were on a walk, and I was talking to him about how I felt like something is not right in our marriage. Like, I am leading everything, and I don't feel like you are leading anything, and this just doesn't seem to be the way God set this up. And he didn't really have much to say about it. And then nothing changed. And we,
Yeah, it was a constant struggle for
yeah.
quite a while.
I mean, I was really just having that. It was just like a constant loop in my head. And then when you're thinking about that and having one thought, it kind of can, your brain can kind of use it to be like, oh, see, now he's not being a leader, look at what he did there, oh, look at that, now he's doing that, and that's definitely not something a leader would do. Or here you are again, you're taking on the burden of leading the family in devotions. Here you are again, you're suggesting that you do a couple's
Yeah.
Bible reading or prayer time, and your brain just finds all this evidence, and it can lead to such pain in your heart. And man, I didn't understand this all. I did not handle this well. I would, instead of what I know to do now, I was criticizing him, and I would bring it up and like, this is probably actually where I used the like, I feel like you're one of my children.
Yes.
Because it was such a lack of, here's my perspective. There was such a lack of ownership of his own life, of leading our family, of making even his own decisions. I didn't even really know who he was, because he was struggling so much with people pleasing and just trying to be what everybody wanted him to be. And to me, that was so not masculine. It was not strong. It made me feel really insecure about the man I've aligned myself with.
Yeah, understandably too.
Because I'm like, I don't even know, like the strength was missing. And I know as women, we really, we love that strength that attracts us to our men, is that strength, that protection. Um, and it was missing. And so I was, very upset, and it was really triggering to me as well. And then when I look at it now, I'm seeing like what I was really feeling was lonely. What I was really feeling was abandoned. Like, why do I feel like I have to run everything? Why am I, in charge of everything in our life? Those were my thoughts. I'm not saying that's actually what was happening. We often have thoughts that are different from what is actually a fact, right? I'm sure Adam, I don't think I was running every single thing in our entire
Absolutely.
life, right?
Yeah.
But that's the thought then.
That's the story that's being told.
Yes.
You're finding evidence for that
And I'm
story.
choosing that thought when I can choose another thought. Anyways, so the point, really, when we find ourselves in this place where we're struggling with wanting our spouse to change, the biggest thing, is really, one question to ask yourself is, why do I need them to change? Right? And then we start to get into the heart of it. We really start to get into like, what's going on with me? What am I feeling? Because as you're, going through this journey of just, because this isn't usually just like oh, I wish he would change this one day, and then the next day I feel differently.
Yeah, it's a process.
Yeah, this is
It's a long
usually,
process.
yeah, this can come up for months and months or years and years and years. And so to really work through communicating without, Adam talked about praying
Yeah.
through this all, but also communicating, making sure that we know how to communicate in a healthy way. And for me at first, like I was saying, I was not communicating in a healthy way. I was like blaming and I was accusing. You're not the leader.
Right.
You don't act like a leader. I feel, like I was saying things like, I feel like I'm the only one who's, instead of getting to like, what emotions was I actually feeling? Well, I was feeling disappointed, right? I was feeling lonely, like I said, abandoned. And the healthy way to communicate that would have been to say, hey, Adam, can I share something that's been on my heart? I'm feeling really lonely in our family, in our marriage. And not like because you are not a leader, we don't want to, that would go into the accusation again, but just sharing your emotion. And then like, I would love it if you could make a few decisions for our finances, or like very specific, like I would love it if you could plan dates for us every week. And really like letting them know how they can serve you, because men love to provide. And so if they know what you're wanting, they're like, yes, okay, I want to provide.
Yeah, or help. Like we want to help things.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be kind of the hero in the situation. We want to like help out and really like show up and impress you with things. Well, if you're putting us down and attacking, it's like no, then my walls are going up, and then I don't like this doesn't feel safe for us to even like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's being, like this is just how I feel and this is what I need. When we have an expressed need, then it's like, oh man, I want to fill that need. I want to step into that. I want to serve her this way. I want to provide for her in this way because it's a need of hers. And when it's expressed in a soft, kind way like that, then that motivates us. It invites us to really step into that need and fill it,
Mm-hmm.
instead of just like kind of put up a wall and be like, okay, whatever, she's attacking me, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, and this brings up for me another like way I have wanted you to change is because what you want when you were talking about needs, because I
Yeah,
have had a need
yeah.
for security in our marriage,
Mhm.
and when Adam struggled with lying and not doing what he said, I felt completely insecure, and so I needed to go to God to get my needs met in
Mhm.
that way. Like sometimes we can express our need to our husband, and for whatever reason he doesn't meet that need, right? He's not perfect, right? He's
Right.
probably not going to perfectly meet our needs. But sometimes, like Adam was saying, men don't meet your need because you're coming at them with an energy that does not inspire them to meet that need either. Not saying that's a reason,
It's
I'm
not a
not saying
reason.
that's a
No,
legitimate
it's not an
excuse, but
excuse or
yeah.
anything, but it is kind of part of the dynamic. And I know
Hmm.
for me, some of the ways that I've struggled with the whole trying to change Kara is she comes at me with a lot of what I would have perceived as controlling things. So like even I remember like even just washing dishes, I'm like trying to help out wash dishes and stuff, and Kara would say, "No, it has to be done this way. You have to run the water in this sink." Like it would be very specific. And I would get very frustrated because I'm like, what does it matter? I'm doing this job. Like, why does it have to be a particular, exact way? Or I know, like, even like setting the temperature in the house, sometimes I get so upset, or turning lights on and off, like really little things, but very, what I was perceiving and telling a story of, that this is very controlling. Like, why can't I just do the things the way I want to do them without a huge, lengthy explanation as to why I'm doing it that way? And so I'm having this whole story, but what's happening for me is, like, I'm trying to change that by being resentful. I'm trying to change that by complaining to her about the way she's showing up, or resisting, like even, passive aggressively, sometimes resisting that control. And how unhelpful that was, to like be in this place where I'm trying to change her. I'm trying to change the way she shows up, instead of actually getting to the deeper things inside myself that were being triggered, which is like this desire to be right or wrong. Like I had this whole need to be right or wrong, and my worth was dependent on whether I'm right or wrong. And so when she's telling me I'm wrong, then I'm
Hmm.
there's something wrong with me. And so my emotions, I'd be going to shame, or I'd be going to like defensiveness and things like that, because I'm like, you know, it's saying something about who I am.
Well, let's be clear. I wasn't telling you you are a wrong person.
No, of
Like
course
you're
not.
not.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I was
Right.
trying to
I just want
say.
you to clarify
Did
that
that?
because I'm kind of confused listening.
Okay. No, no. I'm thinking things are right or wrong based on the way that your standards, or your desire for how things should be. Let's say in washing the dishes or whatever it is, you're setting the standard, and then I'm feeling like a little boy who can't do anything right.
So you're judging yourself. You're
Yes,
saying
yes,
I'm either
I'm in
right
shame of
if
myself.
she likes what I did, or I'm wrong if she
Yes, yes. So
doesn't.
that's what it's triggering in me.
Hmm.
And my desire is to just change that, to make that go away. But what I really need to do is look inside myself and be like, why is this affecting me this way?
Hmm.
Why am I thinking that my value and my worth is tied to this performance that I am doing? And why am I
Hmm.
putting you and your, desires sort of on a pedestal and saying it has to be that way? So there's a lot of like sort of deeper emotional stuff that was going on, that I needed to address and I needed to heal, so that I could show up like stronger and just more in control of myself, instead of like having these resentments and wanting her to change.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think that probably so many people can relate to both of our stories, or some of our experiences. You know, it does go back to really asking yourself that question: why do I need them to change?
Hmm.
Or why does it seem like Why am I telling myself I need them to change? Um, and really just, you can get really quiet with God and ask him. He can bring some insight into that if you're confused. But what happens with this whole thing, which can be so hard for marriages, and we see it a lot, is codependency, where you are, needing this other person to be a certain way for you to be okay. And so that's why we have a whole module in our Healing Your Marriage course on codependency and how to get your needs met with God, because this is such a big deal. And the thing is,
every marriage is codependent. There's always going to be some of that there. So it is something to be working on for everybody.
The thing about that is that God is going to perfectly meet your needs. And so you can come to him every single time and he will tell you or show you how he wants to meet that need, so that you can get, fully, you can get filled by him. Then you're able to come back to your marriage, even if there is legitimate reasons that your spouse does need to change to have a healthy marriage. You can still walk through that. So even if you have legitimate reasons and you're just like, so discouraged, you're really, just exhausted from feeling almost like you're a victim in the marriage, right? Just waiting for this person to change. You can still do your own healing, your own personal growth, healing. What are those wounds that might be inside, that why this is such a big deal to you, if it's coming up really painful. Maybe it goes back to, you felt like men were going to betray you. Maybe you have some really, some unhealed wounds in that area, or that men are dangerous or they're unsafe, right? And so the fact that your spouse does this, it's really triggering a lot of pain. And so you can take some time to heal that and grow, and get those needs met with God, even while your spouse, right? Well, even while you're praying for your spouse and surrendering them, you can, get your needs met with God and do your own kind of growth work, in the meantime, in the waiting, because waiting can be hard. Yeah. So, another question to kind of think about, and this could lead to you feeling compassionate too towards your spouse, who you're kind of waiting to change, waiting for them to change, is why won't they change? Right? Why are they absolutely like not trying, or like they have told you, no, I'm not going to change this? Or is it something that they are struggling with and they're just having a really hard time? Because that could be for a bunch of different reasons. Shame, that, I know that was a big one
That's a
for
huge
you.
one for me. Yeah, because it becomes a loop, and you don't believe in yourself. You don't believe in your own ability to change. Then, so it's very self-defeating, because you look at yourself as not worthy of change, and as if you're the problem. You're viewing yourself as a problem, and that, you're finding your identity in that, and that is extremely hard and painful, and it causes you to not, you kind of have to, you have to find healing for that and break out from that loop, because it's this loop of like just self-defeating thoughts that come over and over and over again. And so yeah, you need to find out, who you really are in Christ, and just revel in that truth. Like, I am a forgiven, loved child of God. I am a prince or a princess, of my heavenly Father. Like, and to just find healing and help in that area.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something that you can, if your spouse is struggling with shame, you can be, encouraging by speaking those kind of words of life, which often we're probably doing the opposite because we're frustrated that they won't change. But what we can do, and this is so much easier, not saying it's easy, but it's easier if you're getting your needs met with God. If you're allowing yourself to feel the emotions coming up for you, offering yourself compassion and validation and love, then you're able to love your spouse better, even though right? They're still working on stuff. And you're able to speak that life and let them know, like, hey, I love you no matter what. Just inspiring that change, instead of kind of stomping on it.
Demanding it.
Mhm,
Yeah.
or manipulating.
Hmm.
Yeah. So another one that could come in is the past wounds. I know for me, Adam wanted me to not be so controlling. And it was actually a wound. Like that was a unhealed, that was coming from unhealed wounds where I felt like I needed to control things so that I felt safe.
Hmm.
Because my nervous system was not, was so used to being unsafe. It felt like I had to always protect myself. And so Adam not stepping into that masculinity and that leadership, that was actually really triggering for feeling like I needed to protect myself, even because he wasn't being that for me. So that was a big one that I had to get met with God, was just like, God, how do you want to meet my need for protection and strength, and stability? So I had to really work with some of those wounds. So that's another reason why maybe they're struggling to change. It
Yeah.
could also be fear, it could be pride, it could be a lot of different things. And again, that's really for them to walk through with God. It's not for you to try to
Right.
tell them, or
But it does give you a reason for compassion.
Yes, yeah.
Now you can approach with compassion. Like if I would have known really what and understood why Carr is showing up with so much need for control, I could have had so much more compassion instead of resentment. And I could have, I could have been more loving in that, and understanding in the way that I was, um, communicating with her about her controlling, behavior that was affecting me.
Mm-hmm. And if you're like, okay, this sounds good, I just need like a walkthrough. We have a whole module in our Healing Your Marriage course on inner healing and emotional healing. And like, we give you the 5 steps to walk through when you're triggered, because we understand, like, we know we have these wounds, but we don't know what do I do to heal it? What is the next step? And so we want to give that to you. That's what our Healing Your Marriage course is really all designed to do, is to walk you through healing these things that you maybe came into marriage with.
Yeah.
And then maybe they've also happened through the marriage and different things that have happened. But regardless, we've got to heal these wounds to try to get reconnected and to get to that place of just so much peace and beauty and joy that God has for us in marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you need any more, if you need your questions answered, if you're like needing more clarification, feel free to comment, send us a message. We're here to help. And, we just want you to know you're not alone as you're walking through this, first of all. But you don't have to stay in this feeling like you're just stuck in bitterness or resentment, waiting for your spouse to ever change. You can take action now.
Yeah.
You can already start working on healing your own stuff. That's only going to help your marriage. That's only going to help possibly inspire them, possibly draw you closer and be able to be more compassionate. It's for sure going to give you more joy and peace, because now you know how to get your needs met. So that's our encouragement. And we hope this was just really, really powerful for you today.